Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another salty Saturday morning. Your triumphant producer has returned from his travails with his fantastic panel of nerds. Minus Brian. We don't know where Brian is, but he did hosting duties while I was away, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a leeway in showing up late today. Hopefully he does show up.
He's still tired. He must still be tired from all that responsibility.
Yeah, must still be, man. Just overwhelmed him.
The Wajo aliens came and sucked him up into their space butthole.
Maybe. But we got with us, as always, Dutch Butters himself, formerly known as Matt Vader 74. How you doing, buddy?
I'm looking at all these articles you sent me and going, maybe I should actually read one of them once in a while. That's what I'm doing.
We all know you don't know how to read Dutch.
That's true. I don't.
Okay.
It's very hard. It's very hard for me to read. You're right.
You never learned. You never learned. What's with the helmet?
I just felt like I probably should wear it today. It seems appropriate.
It's ready for war.
It's ready to go.
Yeah.
That's your Dutch Butters persona. He's always wearing
it's my Dutch Butters hat. Yeah, I think so.
Right on.
Making a thing over here for sure.
Does it keep the Jedi from reading your thoughts?
It does. It does. He can't read my thoughts. This is my Magneto Star Wars helmet. That's right.
Right on. And returning to the program triumphantly as well is Smitty Snippets, one of our favorite YouTube channels. How you doing, Smitty?
Appreciate that. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you've been suffering along with the rest of us watching The Acolyte, and I just thought it'd be fun to have you on to talk about what is arguably the best of the worst episodes out there, episode 5. So I'm glad that you could be here today.
Thanks.
Also, we have linked your channel not only in the description, but also in the chat. We've pinned a comment. So if you haven't checked out Smitty Snippets, go there, subscribe right now. It is a channel worth watching. He is very entertaining.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And the king of the pineapple pizza, the lord of the shelves, has returned from his onerous journeys. Odin of the Sacred Heart. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing phenomenal. Very, very tired, but when you're driving well over 1,000 miles, we recently got a minivan. I'm now that minivan dad life. And I'm glad that we did, because the gas mileage on this thing is phenomenal. That's the kind of things as an adult that you're like, wow, I care so much more about that now than I ever thought previously. But since we've gotten it, we had it with 21,000 miles used, 20,900. We've now gotten up to 24,000 just in the course of getting it the first week driving around, and then the course of this trip, Tulsa, St. Louis, and then back again, all of it with a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old. But everyone's okay. Baby Sif is a little sick, unfortunately, but she's going to be okay. Just a little fever and things like that. But I'm glad to be back. I definitely missed y'all last week.
I think it's funny how you're watching the odometer on your new car, because I did the same thing. I went on a trip a couple weeks ago up to Oregon to visit people, and my Jeep flipped the 100,000 miles on the odometer on that trip, and I'm like, God dang it! There went my resale value just went bloop. It just went down about 40%. So son of.
Also, I gotta keep it forever down. Gas mileage is no joke with gas prices the way they are right now. So
when you're getting 36 on average miles a gallon in a van, yeah,
that's good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, Tom Connors Jr. from Midnight's Edge, back triumphantly after a mysterious absence last week.
The power of two, the power of many. Scissor me timber, sexy space switch, let's screw.
Now not expecting that part.
The dom and I'll be the sub, let's switch. Scissoring all night long. This is the scissoring song. It's so tight, the acolyte. The force is not the force, it's dead. The force is now the threat, thanks to lesbian space witches. Take that, bitches.
Who wrote that song?
Me.
Oh, nice. Who sang it?
AI.
Oh, no.
Well, if that's the type of artistic expression we can expect from AI, I'm all for it.
I actually did my own response song to Amandala, but that was all me, baby.
You know, were you twerking in black and white? Because I'd pay to see that.
I was.
Did you have a fro?
You know I'm follically impaired.
I'm one of the black and white. I figure you're
Tom.
dressing up too. You know, jeez.
Follically impaired. That's one of the reasons I wear this helmet. I mean, look at this.
I'm one to talk. I mean, geez, come on.
Right on.
Yeah.
I think
like
asking a guy in a wheelchair if he wants to go for a walk.
This is the bald bearded guy channel, except for Smitty today. So, you know.
Yeah. All right, guys. So real quick, just want to give a big shout out to Scotty Dub as our top contributor and our top super chatter. Thank you so much for your support, Scotty. Scotty also hit me up while I was on Pop Culture Crisis. So it was good to see him over there. Yeah. And we also have Mexican Iron Man as our most consistent donator. So appreciate Mexican Iron Man. And of course, all of our wonderful gifters, the queen of gifted subs, Jillian N, WG, Sam Schwager, Major Chai Chai, and Eric Winberg. Guys, thank you so much for all your support out there. We really appreciate it. And speaking of support, our goal is 10 new members during this live stream. So if we can get 10 new members signing up to the Salty Nerd membership, whether it be through gifted subs or people signing up of their own free will, that would be fantastic. Also, I want to remind you guys that at the end of this episode, we're going to be redirecting you to The Real McCoy, which is Mephisto's movie reviews Saturday live stream. So if you're not all movied out by the end of Salty Saturdays, be sure to stick around and check him out because he's got good stuff going on over there. And also over at saltynerdclub.com, we got movie commentaries. So if you guys want to hear the Salty Nerd crew dissing on movies, go ahead and go over there and check that out because that's a lot of fun. All right, guys. So let's get into some of this stuff. I actually have something that I didn't email you guys about. And since Odin's on the show, I wanted to ask him about it. Guys, Az has left Friday Night Tights. Odin, give us the inside, spill the tea. Give us the inside
I was
skinny.
kind of wondering.
You act as if I have inside tea to spill. I mean, it was just as much a shock to me as anybody else. From what I could tell, it was something that was going on, conversation between, I assume, between Az and Gary. Clearly, they're still friends because they're still doing the Real BBC together and all that stuff. So really what it comes down to, this is just my own assumption, is it's the time, right? Because it was always very, very late. Even when we moved it up as early as we did, it's still very late. And by the time the stream ends, it's even later where Az is. And he already streams a lot. So my guess is that it's just the time, the amount of hours was just getting a little bit too much, and so he wanted to have a little bit more time. It's my guess right now.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But yeah, everyone's good. Like, there's no like beef or anything.
On Twitter yesterday, I was afraid that Az had actually like passed away because everyone was saying R.I.P. Az.
Yeah,
you know, it was good knowing you. Like everyone had like these like farewell tweets on there.
Yeah.
But is he based in the UK or is he in New Zealand?
Oh yeah, I mean, we always like to joke that he's based in New Zealand, but yeah, he's UK based. So
all right, so that's like 8 hours ahead of. Well, I guess it'd be 7 hours ahead of where Gary's at.
So that means that his time it would be starting around 11 p.m. His time, and so if he's on for an hour, that means it's midnight. Another hour, it means it's 1 a.m. and then so on and so forth.
So is Friday Night Tights going to be actual Friday Night Tights?
Oh, it would be amazing.
Instead of Friday early afternoon tights?
Man, I wish, but I think because we've been at this time now for quite a while, I just doubt that we're going to be moving it any later. And also, we still have Shad, who is
Australian. Yeah. Well, Odin, with Az out of Friday Night Tights, does that mean you might actually get to say a few things on the show?
I might actually have time. Yeah, it's going to be a few less rants, but I mean, we still got people on there who can do some pretty darn good rants. So I'm hoping it'd be nice to be able to get a word in edgewise. That's for sure.
All right. Well, before we get into our topics proper, I want to give a big shout out to Eric Winberg, who gifted 1 Salty Nerd podcast membership. Thank you so much, Eric. And he also sent us $2 in super chats saying, "That is hot, Tom. Good work on that song." Yeah, that was a very good song.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Yes, enjoyed it. And Mexican Iron Man for $10. It's a super sticker saying #1 fan. Yes, we appreciate you, Mike. Hopefully you'll be able to come on, even though you're not a YouTuber, sometime soon. And Mephisto's Movie Reviews has become a YouTube member. So thank you for signing up, Mephisto. Appreciate you. All right, guys. So we talked a little bit about Az, and hopefully Brian will show up because there's a story I wanted to cover with him. So until he gets here, we're going to skip ahead to Agatha First Look. Now, for those of you who have been following Marvel, they have this show about the witch Agatha, who is the bad guy in WandaVision. And this show has gone through numerous various name changes. And I guess they're going with Agatha all along, even though the last I heard it was Agatha, the Witch in the Wardrobe or something like that. Who knows at this point?
How about Agatha, a show I'm not going to watch?
Yeah, that's probably a more accurate description of it.
A show that Mr. Kadish is going to make us watch.
No, I'm not going to make you watch this one. No,
okay.
Because I don't think anyone cares about this one.
Yeah.
But we have this Empire magazine kind of like first look of Agatha, and the Acolyte's been getting a lot of flack about lesbian space witches, and this is lesbian comic book witches apparently. So like what we see in these first look images is like a bunch of witches who I guess are forming a coven in Marvel, and no one really cares. But it's in the latest magazine. They kind of give you this thing, this first look, and says in our exclusive first look image, Agatha all along, we'll see Harkness joined by a disparate mixed bag of witches, including Patti LuPone's Leela, Shashir Zamata's Jennifer, Deborah Jo Rupp's Sharon, and Ali On's Alice. What they have in common is that they're covenless witches, Schaefer tells Empire. Mm-hmm. Witches are defined by deception, treachery, villainy, and selfishness. What sounds like most lesbians, actually. What do you do when you have a group of witches who demonstrate those notions and you need them to work together? A whole bunch of chaos magic you'd expect. So this is kind of like our first look at like what the actual plot of the show is going to be about. And it doesn't sound all that interesting, at least not to me. So I want to get the panel's reaction to this. We'll start.
There's a lot of witches. There's a lot of witches over at Marvel and Lucasfilm right now. I think
Disney,
yeah. What's going on
in general? Well, they've always had the whole princess, evil witch, evil queen thing going on over there. But Dutch, since you're so eager to comment about this, what was your take on Agatha All Along's first look?
I didn't even look at it. I told you I haven't had a chance to like go through your whole list of things. I have had zero interest in this since it was announced way back when, in 16 different names ago. This is just more Marvel nonsense. It's just I can't comment on it a whole lot because I've had zero interest in it. So it has been kind of funny watching them go along and change the title of the show 17 times in the last year and a half. But it is what it is, man. So it's just more crap, more and more crap.
Well, Smitty, you've kind of built your channel on reviewing TV shows nobody wants to watch. Are you planning on reviewing Agatha?
Absolutely not. No, it's trash. I don't know who they're doing this for. Nobody wants to see Agatha. When you think about being a superhero, do you think about Agatha?
Nope.
No. Nobody wants to see a show about Agatha. Nobody. Not even Agatha. So I don't know what to say. I just don't understand why they continue to go this route and just keep making stuff nobody wants to see. They want to see the superheroes that are out front or the villains that are out front. Nobody cares about Agatha. Nobody. Stop it.
This is very true. Nobody does care about Agatha. So I want to throw this to Odin. Odin, this was a decision made back in like very closely after WandaVision hit, where basically Marvel was still doubling down on the MCU. They were like, oh, we already have this female character that we've spent time building up and introducing in WandaVision, so we might as well just make a TV show about her, even though nobody in the fan base asked for this or signaled that they were at all interested in it. And we know that Marvel is still trying to, I guess, pivot with their current strategy, even though it doesn't seem like they're pivoting as far as they probably should. But this basically sounds like a holdover from like a begotten time where Marvel was like, yeah, we're going to be churning out all these TV series, and so we just need characters to do it with. But again, this is about a group of witches, most of which nobody knows about or cares about. So what's your take on this? Do you think that anyone's going to bother watching the show?
No, I don't. I mean, I even shared an article because even Forbes is saying that this is going to be the case. Paul Tassi at Forbes basically saying that we are essentially looking at a show guaranteed to be the least watched show from the MCU at this point. And it's so funny because he even points this out towards the end of the article. Says, how can Agatha even top these shows? Again, quality doesn't matter here. It's the concept of these series in the first place, as this simply does not seem like a show that should have been greenlit if Disney's actually interested in viewership. So even the people over at Forbes are like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense just as a concept, right? And you mentioned before about no one wanting, really asking for the show. The only thing I can think about is that when the show first came out, what was I just blanked on the name of the show, the Scarlet Witch show. WandaVision. Again, so bad I forgot about it. WandaVision. The first episode or two, I was interested. The first episode or two, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's a throwback to 1950s television. Oh, now it's a throwback to 1960s television. Okay, I'm kind of liking these same things. And it was not until the perception that she was having, this world that she had built started to fade away, or when you started getting the real world creeping in, that's when it became uninteresting. Which is funny, right? Because that was supposed to be the big hook of, okay, what's going on here? What's causing this? And as soon as they started introducing any of those things, it became uninteresting to me. It's like, no, I would have actually watched the show probably and been interested all the way through if it had just stuck with these random, every week is a new theme, right? 50s, 60s, 70s, just go through the decades. And then maybe your last episode, you reveal something, because that would have been, to me, more interesting. But instead, they started to unravel by episode 2 or 3. And as soon as they did, I lost any and all interest. But in those first episodes, one of the only things that was interesting to me character-wise was the character being played by that actress. So it wasn't even when we knew that she was this character. It wasn't even when we knew that she was Agatha, right? It was just the actress playing she did a very good job playing that 1950s role. And then being the 1960s friend, again, also made a lot of sense too. And so I think that they took that and said, oh, people are really liking this actress portraying these characters in these time periods. That must mean that they want to see a show about her. And it's like, well, no, because by the end of the show, once you had the final reveal about who she was, yeah, at that point I was like, oh, I don't care about her anymore. She has no interesting qualities to me whatsoever. I think the actress is fine. I think that she's entertaining, but she became no longer entertaining when she became Agatha. Everything before then, she was actually entertaining, and I was actually enjoying that. Mm-hmm. But once that stuff started to get revealed, it became unwatchable. It became just completely awful, and it really wasted her talents, because she does have a lot of talent as that comedic, that comedic character actor that she is. And once you started to actually make her into this villainous character, it didn't work. It very much clashed, I think, with who she is as an actress. And there are sometimes actors that can play against type and do it well. She's not one of them.
Yeah, what's funny is I can remember when we were all watching WandaVision, because, on the Salty Nerd channel, we were doing episode by episode reviews. And there were so many amazing theories about where the show was going and what it was doing. And it just never did any of those amazing theories. It was ultimately just like a real letdown. I think a lot of people forget that originally Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to be the first Marvel TV show to be released. But then when the pandemic hit, they had to re-edit it because it had a lot to do with this virus storyline. So they had to pull that and then push up the release of WandaVision, which was actually supposed to come out and lead into a closer release date to Doctor Strange Part 2, which has Wanda as the main bad guy and all this other stuff. So they basically just screwed up their release schedule with that thing and just kind of dropped the ball on it. And
yeah. And with this one too, that they're overspending on this thing, especially with the delays. And honestly, I'd be surprised if the show gets released at this point, because they've been changing the name of the show every few weeks, it seems. Every week there's a new title, it's a new name. And I mean, Lord knows they're spending well over $100 million on this, which is way more than they need to. And it's going to be bad, I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they just didn't name it Marvel's Witches or Marvel's The Coven or something generic something like that. Yeah,
shouldn't
Tom,
have named it anything. Shouldn't have been made.
Shouldn't have been made. Yeah. Tom, what's your take on this? Do you think Marvel is going to take a big L on this show?
Of course they are. I mean, who wants this? Who asked for it? They didn't get the meme They didn't realize they were being made fun of, and they thought, oh, we should cash in on this. I mean, honestly, if this character was going to be worth a crap, they would have been worth a crap in the show. They weren't. Nobody cares. It's going to be one of the least watched shows ever on Disney. So
I'm wondering if they're ultimately going to pull a Willow and just like, you know, erase it from existence after it airs.
Honestly, at this point, they have pumped it up so much. I don't know if they could without it being such a big. I mean, nobody gave a crap about Willow, and you saw how much of an egg on their face they got from that. I don't know if they could take the lump. Because I'm still predicting they're going to ditch Ironheart without anybody, like, they're going to quietly just ditch it. Because it's been done for like a year, and they still haven't released it, that series. So I think that they should have just done that with this too, but it's too late. And honestly, I mean, the name change thing, I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt that the name change thing was part of the campaign.
Marketing, yeah.
But they even flubbed that. Right? They even screwed that up horribly. Anyway, I have no interest in this, and it's pretty clear the panel doesn't really have any interest in this. When you've got the shill media out there saying that nobody's going to have any interest in this, I mean, what do you expect?
Yep.
All it can do is surprise us, I guess, if it is any good.
And if it is, people still won't be watching it. That's what the hilarious thing about the Forbes article is. It's like,
and Andor,
even if it's a good show, even if people enjoy it, guess what? No one's going to be watching it still because it's just a concept that no one has interest in.
Well, you know what people do have interest in is Jillian N's 5 gifted Salty Nerd podcast memberships. The queen of gifted memberships is back. Thank you so much, Jillian, and we really appreciate you and all your generosity.
That's right.
For everyone out there who now gets access to our Salty Nerd membership content. So be sure to check that out in our Salty Nerd playlist over there on our channel. All right, guys. So enough about Marvel. Let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, Star Wars. In particular, Kathleen Kennedy, because Elon Musk just fucking laid her out like a UFC fighter beating up an old lady on X this past week. So we have this title from Fox Business saying Elon Musk says Lucasfilm's president is more deadly than the Death Star for handling the Star Wars franchise. And he also says that she's super bigoted against men, which is true. But here's the original tweet from Shibetoshi Nakamoto, where we have the Death Star with Planet Killer, then we have whatever that thing is with the System Killer, the Fleet Killer, and the Franchise Killer. And Elon Musk replies, she's more deadly than the Death Star.
True.
And this just goes to show that more and more people are waking up to the fact that Kathleen Kennedy is responsible for the current terrible state of Star Wars. But then there was another tweet that Elon put out where the rabbit hole says, this makes sense. Hard to make something fans like when you hate your fan base. And this is in response to an IGN tweet saying Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy has said women in Star Wars, such as the Acolyte showrunner Leslye Headland, struggle due to a male-dominated fan base. And Elon Musk chimes in and says Kathleen Kennedy is super bigoted against men. And this is absolutely 100% true. I've heard multiple reports from people involved with Lucasfilm that Kathleen Kennedy is a very anti-male person when it comes to the handling of the franchise, even on ancillary stuff like for instance, when EA was promoting their Star Wars games, they refused to have any white males on stage at their live events promoting these games simply because Kathleen Kennedy says I want diversity and I want women on everything related to Star Wars. And so when you have a majority male fan base, when you're pivoting your franchise to a girl boss franchise or a female focused franchise, there's going to be a little bit of pushback on that type of stuff. So I want to throw this to Dutch Butters. Dutch, do you think Elon is correct in how he is describing Kathleen Kennedy?
Oh yeah, 100%. He's definitely correct. God bless Elon Musk. You know, I wish I could go out and spend $4 billion on a platform just so I could sit there and troll everybody with my based political stances. I mean, I love this guy. He's the best thing in the world. trying to change the world over there in Twix, and I love it. You know, how many people with his kind of sway are you going to see out there just, you know, telling the world how it really is with his tweets and things? It's fantastic. I love it. I wish more people would be like him and do the same thing without the fear. So
Tom Connors, let me ask you this. What do you think about Kathleen Kennedy's anti-male stance when it comes to Star Wars?
I think it's pretty obvious.
Mhm.
I mean, she comes from an era that's clearly, you know, that feminist movement, and she's all for the modern feminist movement. We've heard more than enough rumors and stories about her by now. I mean, she's become the meme, you know, so, you know, put a chick in it and make it gay.
And lame.
And lame, yeah. Tell me, you could probably tell me, you know, a ton of other things that would have me more surprised than that,
Mhm.
obviously. I mean, we've known it for a while. It's pretty obvious. She's going to keep doubling down on it. As far as she's concerned, as long as they get rid of the old white dudes, then all these diverse people are just going to come pouring into the franchise somehow. She's one of those people that's convinced of that. So,
the great Star Wars replacement theory, indeed.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to throw this over to Smitty. Smitty, you know, Elon Musk has a pretty big microphone. Like when he tweets, people pay attention to it.
Mhm.
So what do you think are going to be the ramifications of him kind of highlighting the fact that Kathleen Kennedy is anti-men and destroying the franchise of Star Wars?
Nothing. I mean, he's pretty big. I'm not a super fan of his approach, but he's right. I mean, he's absolutely right. If she would have just focused on story and made a good story. I mean, she could have put anyone she wanted in the story in any one of these movies, but her stories are so shit that it's just obvious. And then she comes out with all these statements about, oh, we want inclusion. We don't want white men in this. We don't want, you know, we want gay actors. We want representation, all this other. I mean, that's fine. I don't care about that. But when your story sucks and you're coming out and you're saying stuff, and has it ever gone well when you bash people in the media? When you've ever talked about people, you've ever talked about the fan base, has it gone well? Oh, you guys suck. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm going to fix myself and come back and watch your movies later. It just doesn't make sense to me why you would do something like that. But maybe she doesn't like money. I don't know.
She's got plenty of money. She doesn't care about that type of thing.
Well, she's got other people's money to spend too. So
yeah, exactly. She's got Disney money.
Right.
That's FU money. Odin, at least she acknowledges that the vast majority of Star Wars fans are men, but she doesn't seem to want to cater to those fans. What do you think about Elon Musk kind of exposing this bias? Do you think it might have any positive effect on the franchise, or is it, like Smitty says, just going to get ignored?
I mean, yeah, it's going to get ignored. If before that, you could look back to the South Park references, right? And that was really the biggest, the thing that would have had one of the biggest larger cultural impacts, right? Where more people would have heard that, would have seen that. And if they had never heard of Kathleen Kennedy before, now they know who she is. And their first impression of her is based off of, Cartman as, a Cartman-based character, right? So I think that probably had, a bigger impact in that capacity. Obviously, Elon Musk has a lot of reach, and so I think that, more people maybe that hadn't seen that might now hear about it. But the numbers are just very clear on this. I was actually going back using, it's like Movio or movieio.com, and they do demographic breakdowns. And if you go back to Force Awakens, if you go back to The Last Jedi, the audience for the opening weekend is about 70-30. Men being 70% or roughly 70% of the audience. And I know that there's some stats out there that it's 60-40, but I think that 70-30 sounds a bit more correct to me. And again, that's just based off of the opening weekend audiences. And so when you are constantly trying to, and it's very clear from the way that they've marketed themselves, from the Force is female to we're going to make more stories for women in this universe, when the stories that are quote unquote, I guess, directed towards men, it's so interesting that they're focused on trying to make stories by women, but then they're never trying to make stories for or by men. Instead, it's either for women or it's for everybody. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you're just going to choose one gender to appease and you're just going to act like everything else is just not? I mean, if you were actually going to try to appeal for men, why would you make movies and shows that have no appeal to them whatsoever, to the point where the movies alone show you've lost a huge portion of your fan base? When your first film makes over $2 billion, like just, insane amounts of money, and then by the end of it, you're at $1 billion and you're losing money because of how much money you're wasting on bad scripts, on bad stories. I mean, at this point, and I've been saying it for a long time, until the people who are in charge, and I don't just mean the CEOs, I don't just mean the board, I mean the people that are having their money in that company, right? Until the shareholders until they actually start to hold the people accountable and start to actually try to make, proactive changes, nothing's going to change. None of this is going to get back to them. And if it does, they're just going to ignore it, because we've now seen them running this franchise into the ground since 2015. Some would argue even before then, but as far as most people seeing it for themselves, The Force Awakens, a lot of people were willing to give the benefit of the doubt with that movie. By the time Last Jedi came around, though, all that goodwill, most of that goodwill was gone. And by The Rise of Skywalker, you lost the rest of them. And it's just been chipping away with every single show, with every single statement they've made. And it's continuing to lose and lose and lose. And so you had this male-dominated brand, and Disney had always been known as a female brand. And so part of the reasons why they acquired it in the first place, they said, was because they wanted to get more, guys into the Disney universe. It's one of the reasons why they got Marvel too. Now, all of a sudden, they're chipping away these franchises. Some of history books, history books, especially the history of cinema, will cover this period of history as one of the worst fumblings of a franchise and IP in the entire history of the world.
Yeah, it is sad that you have these great IPs that Disney owns, and they just don't want to give the audience what they want, right? Like just cater to your existing audience and then expand from there. Don't try to change the demographic. Doesn't make any sense to me.
It's pretty wild.
What does make sense to me, though, is that Aaron Charman gifted 5 Salty Nerd podcast memberships. We have hit our goal for today, guys.
Nice.
Aaron, thank you so much. That's very, very generous of you. Appreciate you guys. All right. So let's start talking about the Acolyte. In particular, the Acolyte episode 5, or Acolyte as refers to it, which I think is a pretty appropriate
About the
term.
Ejaculite. I like that.
The Ejaculite, yeah. Or the
I've been just calling it the activist.
The activist, yeah, the DEI light or something like that. Before we get into our takes on episode 5, I wanted to highlight this article from Internet Movie Database, which is actually from Fiction Horizon, that they kind of cribbed. But according to Variety's Luminite data, episode 4 experienced a 31% drop in minutes watched between June 13th and June 20th. Some fans defended the decline, attributing it to episode 4's shorter runtime. While this argument holds some weight, it doesn't fully explain the significance in the drop. So even on like the ratings front, you remember when they came out and said, "Oh, the Acolyte, it's the biggest TV premiere since Ahsoka, or like whatever. It's the biggest premiere on Disney Plus of the year," and everyone's like, "Okay, but how did they come up with those numbers?" And now they're saying that as the show goes along, it's experiencing quite a significant drop off in viewership. Odin, you're one of our numbers experts on the panel. What does this tell you?
Yeah, I mean, because we have to remember how they quantify what a view is. And the way that they quantify a view is the time total watched divided by the runtime. And so even if you were to try to argue saying, well, because the episode is shorter, then that means that you're gonna, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, well, even if that were the case, because of it being divided as total watch time divided by the runtime of the show, then the views, if they were actually being consistent, if they were not losing people, should still be relatively, close, unless they are actually losing people, right? And I've already said that that's already one of the ways in counting views that I hate, because, you could have 100 people spend 1 minute watching it and they count that as 100 minutes. and that means that they would count that as 3 or 4 views. And it's like, well, no, I'm sorry, if you're just watching a minute of a show, that should not count as an actual view. It's like when you're scrolling on Twitter and you're seeing the impressions versus the actual views, right? And it's like, okay, no, I'm sorry, just because 1 million people happen to scroll by this video and it auto-played for a second does not mean that you have 1 million people that have actually watched it. That's essentially what they are doing with when they're reporting on their views. And so the fact that you're seeing a tremendous drop-off should not be surprising to anyone, because we know what happened in episode 3, and we know that every episode that has even happened since has not really been able to right the ship in any way, right? 3 is clearly kind of like, I think right now, the bottom, but to say that the other ones are significantly better is just not true. I mean, you're talking about very marginally, marginally being better in comparison, right? You're still talking about crap, but it's basically saying, okay, well, this crap is, is maybe an inch smaller in size, right? This pile of crap is a little, is an inch smaller in size. It's like, yeah, it's still a pile of crap. It's less crap, but it's still crap, right? And that's essentially what you have going on here. And so, yeah, when they're trying to defend it, saying the 30% drop is more so because of the runtime, it's like, well, if we're basing it off of how they quantify views, it should still theoretically be, consistent, unless they're losing audience, which wouldn't surprise me if they are.
Yeah, and Tom, I want to throw this to you for a second, because this article actually does make an interesting delineation between views in terms of like minutes watched, which is the 31% drop between episodes 3 and 4. But they also are kind of quantifying viewers as opposed to views. And what they're saying is that, yeah, views might be dropping, but the number of people viewing the actual show is dropping even more, and it's not being reported on. So what's your take on these metrics? Like, what does this signal, or what should it signal to Disney about like how people are receiving the show?
Well, I mean, what it should do and what it will do are two completely different things, because these people live in La La Land, and again, they will just keep chalking it up to, well, there's going to be some loss. There's going to be some loss before we regain some ground, right? Like, even though they've been beating this drum for almost 10 years now, they're still under the impression, as I said before, that once they get rid of the old white dudes, all these diverse groups will come flooding to these franchises. So they are under the impression that there will be a slow time or a low period or whatever. And that's probably what they'll chalk all this up to. But hopefully they learn a lesson. I doubt it, because I keep hearing the same thing from several different people, and that is a lot of Disney has learned some lessons, or at least trying to right the ship, Marvel specifically. But Lucasfilm is its own island, and they do what they want. And Kathleen Kennedy has a lot of power over there, whether it's because of what George Lucas did through the contract, or just because she is who she is. I don't know, and I don't care. But at this point, who cares? Even if so, and I know it's been said many, many times, even after Kathleen Kennedy, nobody can come in and really fix this thing at this point. Mm-hmm. The only hope was Jon Favreau to kind of keep things at an even keel at that point with Mandalorian, and then they kind of told him to screw off in so many words, or at least drove him off, let's say, because of how Kathleen Kennedy treated him, probably. But no, at this point, I what do they expect? What are they going to learn? What is to learn? Really, I mean, they're just going to keep doubling down, quadrupling down, because it's like, I know there's been a lot of talk about the Acolyte season 2, and that might come up here. But even that's a situation where it's like, the only reason if that even has any kind of future is just out of spite. They're just going to keep it going because, like, Batwham, and just try and prove us wrong, or whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's dead. It's done.
It's like Kenobi season 2 is in development. It's like, really? Why?
Just what everyone asked for. Yeah. And I've mentioned these before too, about the Rotten Tomatoes critics and everything, right? Where they're like, oh man, 100 critics have reviewed. It's like, well, actually they're just adding up the individual reviews for each episode and saying that it's, those many people. And so as of right now, I think episode 5 has the most reviews for Rotten Tomatoes critics. So 16 critics have actually reviewed that show, versus the first episode of House of the Dragon, where it was 23. So again, I know that that's small still, right, by comparison, but just if you think about it percentage wise, there's a lot more people interested in House of the Dragon, even amongst critics, versus, the
or
fact
Bridgerton or stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the fact that even the fact that you have, even amongst the elite critic class, a clear preference for non-Disney content is showing you how damaged the Disney brand is right now.
Well, House of the Dragon's an actual good show too, as well. What's funny is, people like to give people like us a lot of crap for being, all the things, all the ists and the phobes, but yet somehow we watch a show like House of the Dragon, which still has all the DEI stuff, has a very diverse cast. It has all, the queen chick. She's in the real world. She's trans. She's a they them. And nobody cares. We just want to be entertained. We want good entertainment in television. We don't want to be preached at. You know what I'm saying? So you can't tell me that argument that we're all a bunch of ists and phobes because we reject some piece of shit like The Acolyte, but yet we embrace a show like House of the Dragons, which still has all that stuff in there. It's just better written, better produced, and better done. So I reject all that stuff. It's not what we're about. We want to be entertained by quality entertainment, not garbage. So,
yeah, there is this prevailing narrative that Lucasfilm keeps pushing that the Star Wars fan base is toxic. And it's not that the Star Wars fan base is toxic. It's just that they call out bad shit when they see it. Like even the prequels, like the reason that, people hated on the prequels was because they were bad. They were badly told stories. And in comparison to the Disney sequels, like they're a little bit better, but they're still crap, right? So like, it's not that the Star Wars fan base is toxic. It's just that the fan base wants better material for the franchise, and the people in charge of making it aren't giving it to them. And that goes back to George Lucas as well. Like as soon as George Lucas got rid of anyone who told him his ideas sucked, his worst ideas basically got pushed to the forefront. But speaking of bad ideas, let's talk about the actual episode 5 of The Acolyte. And I want to throw this to our special guest Smitty, because he's been painstakingly covering each and every episode on his channel. And I highly recommend you guys go check out his series, because no one takes apart a show quite like Smitty. So Smitty, episode 5, by and large, has been hailed as the best episode of The Acolyte, but considering how shitty the other episodes have been, that's not quite the bar that people think it is to hold it up to. But we got a lot of lightsabers fighting. We got a lot of flashy. We got a Sith bad guy in the mix finally, and we got the greatest haircut ever known to mankind. So what is your take on episode 5 of The Acolyte?
It was shit. It was terrible. I thought I missed an episode, if I'm being honest, because May said that she was going to turn herself into the Jedi, and then she started fighting Jackie, and I was like, no, I had to turn this off. I got to go back. I think I missed something. No, she changed her mind again. Just changed her mind, and I don't understand why you would write this character this way. I mean, the first episode, she loved her sister Osha, but then tried to kill her. And she wanted to train all this time to kill the Jedi who hurt her. Then she quit, and she wanted to turn herself into Jedi, and she stopped. I don't know how you write this, and you're like, yeah, this is phenomenal stuff. Just got to keep going. It's poor writing. I mean, the lightsaber duel was pretty good, pretty well choreographed. I'll give them that. It is the best of the series so far, but it's still bad. Like, the story makes no sense thus far, and I don't think there's anything they can do in the last few episodes to tie all this stuff together. You're gonna go, it makes sense now. It's not. It's terrible now. It's gonna be terrible when it's done. So
Dutch Butters, a big buildup was set up to reveal the identity of Smilo Ren, and to the shock of no one, it was his name Quimir or whatever, the
Asian Ezra Miller.
Asian Ezra Miller was. And it was literally a surprise to no one, because from the moment he appeared in episode 2, everyone was like, "Oh, he's the master. He's the Sith Lord. He's just in disguise."
I figured it was going to be one of the mothers, but I guess I was wrong. It's okay.
Well, I was like, the minute I saw him, I was like, that guy is the Sith Master in disguise. But what I thought was funny is that in the first episode, you have this big monologue from him where saying like Jedi can't be killed by steel or laser. And then this entire episode was him killing Jedi with, lightsabers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of incongruency in this show. But what was your take on episode 5?
My review was, lasers. The show still sucks. Or laser swords. That's what. I'm stumbling. I can't talk. I enjoyed the lightsaber fights in this episode. I did. But that's all I enjoyed about this episode. I mean, there was lots of sword fights and stuff. It was cool, and I think that's why they turned this episode and the last episode into 2 episodes, because it was clearly one episode that they chopped in half for, time. I don't know why, but it was just an action-packed episode with less dialogue than normal and with laser sword fights. I don't know what else to say. It was just more things. I did like the fact that a lot of people died. That was interesting. That was the most death and destruction I've seen in a Disney product in quite some time. The double impale, that was an interesting one. I got to give them a little bit of credit for doing that with the force pull onto the lightsaber. I was a little disappointed that they killed the little Wolverine girl. What's X-23? That kind of threw me off for a loop there. I was not expecting that, especially with the triple stab. That was kind of fun. But
she'll walk it off though. She's still alive.
Yeah, but she's the one character in this thing that I figured maybe they could do a spinoff with at some point. Maybe she was the Ahsoka of this iteration of Star Wars, but I guess not. So it is what it is, man. I'm just happy that Milo Ren, he just wants to live his Sithy lifestyle in peace without people bothering him. He's tired of being oppressed by these evil Jedi. He just wants to, be left alone. And they didn't even know he existed anyway. So how can they leave him alone if they didn't know he existed?
That's a great point.
Yeah, and also like he said, I want to be able to train an apprentice, and he's like, but you spent 16 years doing that. You're already doing all the things that you said you wanted to do.
It's like it's almost like he has some kind of access to social media. It says, will you guys people just leave me alone for being such a weirdo? I just want to be left in my safe space to do my thing, right? So I don't know. It's just he seems like he's an allegory for something, if you know what I'm saying. So there you go.
Well, what's also interesting about it is that Ki-Adi-Mundi had that famous line in The Phantom Menace where it's like the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, and in this episode, you have Saul straight up ask the master, it's like, who are you? And he's like, I don't have a name, but some might call me. And then he looks at the camera and he says, Sith. and it's just like at that point, it's like, okay, how are they going to reconcile this? Like, Smitty, did you pick up on that?
I did. I have a different take on it than everyone else, but I did pick up on that. Yeah.
All right. Real quick, before we get to your take, I want to welcome Brian back to the program.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, guys. I overslept, man.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, that's the only excuse you have?
I have no other excuse. I literally just overslept and my ringer was off.
Well, we're talking about our reviews of Acolyte episode 5, and we'll get to you in a second, Brian. But thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here. Good job on hosting last week, by the way. Appreciate you stepping up for that. Smitty, what was your take on the whole Sith thing?
I don't think he was saying he was Sith. I think he was saying, and I could be wrong, I think he was saying that the Jedi would consider him Sith because he's not following the rules that they set forth. Like you either use the powers and or your abilities and become a Jedi, or you don't use them at all. And it just seems like if you don't fit in what the Jedi wants you, in that little block the Jedi wants you to fit in, that you would be considered Sith. You want your own Padawan and everything, and you don't follow their rules, you'd be Sith. So that's how I took it. I could be wrong, but that's just how I saw it.
Well, Odin, what struck me about that moment is that Saul, who's a Jedi master, very well learned man who's training young Padawans to close their eyes. He had no idea who the Sith were. Apparently, like, none of the Jedi in the High Republic even know what Sith are. So, like, it was just, he kept saying, like, who are you? Why did you reveal yourself? and like, there's also this whole thing about, so they introduced an EU, they didn't really introduce it, they just used it and didn't tell anyone what it was, but they introduced this EU metal that can disrupt the energy of a lightsaber. And apparently the Sith Master's helmet, Smilo Ren's helmet, is made of this, and he has like an arm guard that's made of it too. So whenever the Jedi would hit him on his helmet or on his arm guard, their lightsabers would short out for a brief period of time.
Yeah, at least that's the theory right now.
Well, so in all this time that there's been Jedi, not one single Jedi has gotten a little bit of an ego above himself and decided, I'm going to be bad and use my powers for bad. Not once. That's what they're trying to claim with the show. Something
like that. But Odin, what was your take on episode 5 of The Acolyte?
Yeah, shout out to Ryan, our Outpost, who is just a scholar of Star Wars in so many different ways, especially of the EU, because he was able to remind me of the metal kurtosis, which is that metal that is very, very rare, very difficult to mine, very difficult to actually put together, but that one of the properties it has is that ability to basically short out a lightsaber. Now, to actually craft it into a helmet and be able to take several blows with it, that seems to be going a little bit beyond it, which is why some are speculating that, you know, maybe they're trying to go for the kurtosis, but it might actually be, you know, something, you know, plot armor, basically, something that they're just making up for this show just to be able to have that sequence happen. We'll see if they actually reveal it. But the one thing I do want to talk about when it comes to this episode, especially with this, you know, reveal that was not a secret at all. I remember all of us were like, yeah, it's definitely Asian Ezra Miller, right? I mean, that's what they're implying. I mean, we also were expecting it to swerve, but then when they did, we're like, wow, okay. Wow, you just made that very obvious from the beginning. It's like, okay, good on you, I guess. But I will say, though, with the instruction that he was giving to May, right, of how she should not be killing the Jedi with certain weapons. Now, this is a defense. I'm not saying that they did this effectively or that this is even what they said, but I could see how they would try to argue potentially that, well, this was the instruction he, as the master, was giving to her about, here's how you specifically need to go about this. Not that you can't actually kill a Jedi by these things, but rather you have to follow these specific set of rules to follow, to become, you know, to actually be my my apprentice, to actually be my acolyte, or whatever word they're going to try to use for. They're obviously using different words for these things now, right? The Force is now the thread, all these other things. But again, I think that that's where they're trying to go by, is saying you can't kill by this because that's my instruction to you. And it would also make sense as to, okay, well, that's how he's not going to reveal himself, because if she's killing them through means that would not be able to be brought back or point to a Sith or to a Force-sensitive person, then you would, again, still stay hidden. I'm not saying that they did that effectively, because it didn't. Like, literally, I'm not even connecting that until just now through this conversation. I'm like, oh, I guess that might be what they were trying to do, but maybe I'm just trying to give them too much credit in saying that that's what they were trying to do. But the thing I hate most about this episode, right, is everyone's going crazy for these lightsaber battles, right? Especially the people that are still fans of the show, saying, but those lightsaber battles are so amazing. It's like, okay, you know, Shad is going to be breaking those things down about how bad the actual fight choreography was. So I would only give credit to the actual stunt men and women working in that, because they're just being told what to do. They're being say, hey, here's the choreography. And I think that, you know what? I will give them praise. I will say, hey, good on y'all for doing that, because y'all are just doing what y'all are told to do as far as the movements. Whether they make sense or not, it's really not your, you know, purview. It's the person who is actually choreographing it. So the fight choreographer, yeah, I don't think they did a good job. And the writers especially did an awful job. When you have the fact that you have Jedi Knights and even a Jedi Master struggling against May and struggling against this Sith guy, and yet a Padawan, right, the one who's the X-23 girl, a Padawan, yeah, that she's able to essentially hold herself on for a longer period of time and fight much better and much more effectively, is, think of it in, if anyone's ever taken Taekwondo or karate before, especially if you're in America, right, where there's a lot of schools of that, that's like having a green belt fight a black belt. Right, they're both at the same school. They're both the same age. Like, let's just assume all these things are the same. And the level of training is a green belt versus a black belt. I'm sorry, green belt's not beating a black belt. if you're looking at everything as equal except for training, okay? And then you then on top of that have a black belt being better than a sensei, being better than the actual teacher and the actual instructor. So like that's the kind of stuff that they had in this show. And so when she died, I was actually surprised. I was happy because I'm like, okay, good, because if you have these Jedi Knights dying, but the Padawan doesn't die, it's like, I'm sorry, that's a little silly. And then the fact that they had to go 3 times through, I think one, they liked that visual because it was a cool visual to look at. But also, I imagine they did that because, well, a lot of people have survived in the more recent era of Star Wars, a lightsaber through the gut or whatever. So let's make sure that everyone's clear that she's dead. That'd be hilarious if she came back, right? It's like, oh, well, my race has 5 hearts, and so they just got 3 of them. I
can see that happening, yeah.
I mean, it's like, in this era of Star Wars, you know what? Who's to say that they would not actually do that? And the Sith line, the last thing I'll say, I think that was just them trying to be clever. I think that they were like, oh, look at this moment. I'm what you might call Sith. Like, I honestly don't think there was not much more depth in their thinking than, oh, this would be clever because it's like, oh, the Sith, they actually have been around for less than a millennia.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't. Go ahead. Sorry.
I will say that, the whole riddle about like, how do you kill a Jedi without a weapon? Like it's pretty obvious to me that you turn them to the dark side, right? Because there's that line in episode 4 where Vader betrayed and murdered your father. And it's like, okay, so like if you tempt someone over to the dark side, you're basically killing off the Jedi and birthing a Sith, essentially. And so like that, like my take on that is that the Asian Ezra Miller's goal here was to have May tempt her sister over to become yet another apprentice and get her over to the dark side. So that was my reading of it. And I'm sure that we'll find out by the end of this series, what they actually mean by that. Another thing that really annoyed me about this episode is there's a certain point where Saul has defeated the bad guy. And this is a guy who just killed his Padawan, just killed all the Jedi Knights under his care. And Osha shows up and she's like, Saul, no. I'm like, dude, just fucking decapitate this guy, because the whole reason that they wanted May alive, right, to capture May alive, was to find out who her master was. And they found that out. And so it's like, kill that guy, make sure things are safe, because that's not a dark side thing. Like if you're killing a dark side guy who just murdered all these light side guys, like that's justice. That's not vengeance. So like this whole idea that they just didn't go through with that at that moment really, really bugged me. But I want to hear Tom's take on this, because Tom, I'm sure this episode might have bugged you. Did you even watch this episode or?
No, and I'm glad I didn't. Just listening to you guys talk about it is making my brain hurt. I mean, I've caught bits and pieces of the show as I've edited, videos for Andre and stuff, and I've seen all the memes and the video clips. But yeah, no, I am so tapped out of Star Wars at this point that if I didn't, I'm sure I'd have more health problems than I already do, because this shit just sounds detrimental to people's health.
It is. It
definitely raises your blood pressure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'm only watching it because he's making us.
I mean, like Smitty is kind of right, like with the whole idea of that the Jedi kind of pretty much consider anybody who doesn't follow the dogmatic practices of the Jedi a non-light user, in so many words, because even the debate about Count Dooku in the prequels, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of the lesson we learn there, is you can't, no matter what you do, you can't really separate yourself from the Jedi, or it's a straight path to the dark side, right? There's one or the other, light or dark. They're going to try and introduce the gray Jedi in this. This is what from when you guys keep talking, I hear other people keep talking. That's clearly where they're headed with this, and that's going to destroy everything and anything there is about the Jedi. And I know it's been a fan favorite thing for certain people for years to have this idea that, oh, you can have a gray Jedi. It's like, no, that's just as stupid as having misunderstood villains. Mm-hmm. It only works some of the time, but very rarely. And when it comes to the Jedi, they learned that's what the whole Star Wars saga is really about, if you think about it. And I've said this before, when you get to Empire, it's Luke proving Yoda wrong that the dogmatic practices of the Jedi are part of the, that are part of the problem. Because he says, if you leave now, sacrifice everything that they have fought for, because, he won't finish his training or whatever. And he goes and saves his friends, proving that his strength is his friends and family, right? To where the dogmatic practices of the Jedi have always been, you have to get rid of those attachments. So at least that's the message I got from the Star Wars sequels and prequels out of it.
Well, speaking of misunderstood villains, I'm going to throw this over to the original Smoke Show himself, Brian. Brian, what was your take on episode 5 of The Acolyte?
Bro, when I overslept, I woke up thinking, at least I skipped the Star Wars stuff.
No,
and I come in as you guys were starting it.
No, I saved it on purpose for you.
Yeah, we saved it.
Yeah, I have very little interest in this show. I'm only watching it basically because we're reviewing it, and every week I'm just bored out of my mind. I don't know what people are talking about. The lightsaber battles are not that special. The choreography is bad. Everything feels telegraphed, and I don't care about the characters enough. And I agree with Tom too. The whole Gray Jedi thing is stupid. I never liked it. Like, it could work, but it's so rarely. It's not going to work. Like, that's just plain and simple.
Not with these writers.
Not with these writers.
The closest you can get to a Gray Jedi is Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, a pissed off Jedi. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, in the original trilogy, right? Like, to where he does have attachments, right? He has his friends and family still. Mm-hmm. That's the only real difference between him and the other Jedi.
Right. Maybe they're trying to go with like the anti-hero angle, a good guy who does bad things for good reasons, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, but the writing on this show is really bad, and I don't know what people are talking about with the lightsaber battles. They're not special in any way. I've seen better lightsaber battles between a bunch of fat guys on YouTube.
They shish kebab 2 of them on one lightsaber. It was awesome. Come on now.
Who cares?
Plus, it was a dark soundstage. You could barely see anything, but the light was so clear. I mean,
it was dark.
I will.
Again, I've seen better lightsaber duels on YouTube 12 years ago between fat nerds.
On what did Gary say? It's the repurposed Jungle Cruise set. Is that what he said? Something like that.
He did, yeah.
Well, guys, we kind of skipped over the highlight of episode 5, talking about all the lightsaber stuff, but we had May, who basically gave herself a haircut with a lightsaber, and became a master of disguise by basically fooling everyone into thinking that she's Osha now that she cut her hair.
I'm Osha now,
including a Jedi master.
A tattoo on her forehead.
She should have that little scar that she got from the indoctrination into
the hair covers it completely. Come on.
Can't Saul read minds? Shouldn't he immediately be able to tell that this is the wrong twin?
I sense his presence.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because by the end of the episode, you're like, okay, a Jedi master cannot sense this, but a little beaver dude can smell it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the beaver guy. Oh my God.
Little beaver guy.
The they them. You mean
that's right.
They them beaver. But the ending of this episode just boggled my mind because, first of all, Osha stops Saul from killing the master, right? But then she instantly uses her best friend that she loves, the little pocket droid, to turn it into a flashlight that she then hooks onto the bad guy's back so that the bugs can kill him. Yeah. And then like as he flies away being like ripped apart by these bugs, supposedly, Saul's just like, okay, I guess we're just going to go back to the ship now. And it was actually he got knocked out, and that's when Osha and May like did the Parent Trap thing and switched places.
Dude, as it happens, all I could think of was pitch meetings where it's like, oh, he's got taken away by giant bugs. That's gonna be hard to get out of. Actually, it'll be super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Oh, really? Yeah. Later on, he'll just float down after having killed them all. Oh, okay. Yeah,
he can kill like 5 Jedi Knights instantly, but it takes him about an hour to kill these bugs that are like flying him around out there. So like the ending of this episode, it's obviously setting up the next episode, but I think it's pretty obvious that once Saul kind of confesses what happens to May, at some point Saul's going to die, right? Because he's never going to get back to Coruscant to give his report about the Sith thing. May is obviously going to turn to the light side. Osha is going to be turned to the dark side by the Sith Lord, and the sisters are going to have to fight each other, and one of them is going to have to fall to whatever side the other sister's on. I guarantee you that's where this thing is headed. But it's such a frustrating show because that the moment that she like lit the lightsaber and then like stood up and like her hair went flying everywhere, it was supposed to be like this like huge oh shit heroic moment.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, she could have cut her hair with those like little dagger knives that she has too. Like this was like such a weird segment of the show.
Should have set her hair on fire. That's what it should have done. Just be like, oh my god, my hair is on fire.
It did not work. It did not work.
I know, right?
Can we just like mention really quick that I did think it was pretty cool that they snapped Jedi Bad Hair's neck. That was pretty cool.
Except he was a Jedi Knight. So he's like no threat at all. And it's like, oh, okay, so your Padawan is gonna do great.
All I'm saying is I did not expect him to die.
Oh yeah, same.
And I did not expect him to die in such a brutal manner on screen. I mean, it was just damn. He straight up snapped his head off. It's crazy.
Where's Yord's Padawan? Like, remember she was like there in the first episode and then she just kind of disappeared. Aren't Padawans supposed to be traveling with their masters?
Did she die on the ship? I don't remember.
She didn't die on the ship.
Okay.
But
I fell asleep in that episode, so I honestly don't remember.
No one died on that ship. It was just, I think Gary called her
really dead.
I think Gary called her Jenny Nicholson. So like, the Padawan, it's like she was there in the first episode and then she just kind of disappeared and no one's seen her since. I think the writers just kind of forgot about her. I'm actually surprised that, because what we saw in episode 5 was just like one long hate crime playing out in front of our eyes because all the diverse Jedis and women just got brutally murdered by Asian Ezra Miller, right? So I'm actually surprised they went. You'd think that they'd all be white guys, so like it'd be like, oh, it's fine if they died.
Well, if he was white, maybe that's when they would have done it. But maybe because
they just let him go.
Being diverse, yeah,
and they just let him go. They had him dead to rights right there. It could have ended the whole show. Roll credits, and they just let him go.
Right. Oh, we didn't even talk about reading the Miranda rights to May.
Yeah, right.
I know why it's like I'm reading Miranda rights. I'm like, what? What are you doing?
Wasn't she going to turn herself in like the very last episode?
She was like, I'm turning myself into them.
I want to switch to the good side. I'm just going to go turn myself in and confess that everything will be okay. And then like 30 seconds later, I'm going to kill everybody. It's like, I don't get it.
The most hilarious point in this show was when Smilo Ren was holding May hostage in front of Saul. And Saul's like, wait a minute. Both of you are bad guys. Why should I care if you kill her? I mean, it's like, the entire time I was sitting there, I was like, that's not Osha. Like, he's not holding Osha hostage. He's holding his own apprentice, the one who killed 2 Jedi Masters, the one who you've been after, like doing this manhunt on for like 3 or 4 episodes. That's who he's holding hostage.
Right.
Why do you care if he kills her or not? Didn't make any freaking sense. And there's so many times where Smilo Ren could have easily killed like Jeke or Saul or like whatever.
Did you say Smilo Ren?
Yeah, Smilo Ren. And he just gets distracted and like leaves and he just forgets to kill them or something like that. Like it was
seriously the first time you've heard Smilo Ren? I've been hearing
I'm not following this shit, bro.
He just woke up, okay?
He's acting like some.
Also, my brain's a little soft right now.
There's
no actual delay, but for my brain, it feels like there's a delay. So I'm hearing things like 3 seconds late right now.
All right, guys. So any predictions on what's going to happen in episode 6?
It's going to suck.
Flashback.
A lot of flashback.
Go flashback.
Yeah.
Something big has just happened. I think it's a great time for a flashback.
It's time for a flashback.
If it's not a flashback, then it's going to be some lame, because they'll be like, oh, we had all those fights in the last episode, so now we need more exposition. And it's going to be some explanation of either who Smilo Ren is really, that he has or the reveal that he has a master that he has to report to, or like who trained, like It's gonna be something stupid like that. But I think we're gonna have at least one more flashback episode where it's gonna be like, oh boy.
Yeah, it's like prequels within prequels.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, guys. So we got a member chat from Donut Lord, member for 9 months. Thank you, Donut Lord. When you guys start talking about Star Wars, I want to turn off the live stream. Star Wars is 1 through 6. I'm bored with Star Wars conversations. Sorry. Well, you're probably not going to want to tune in to a couple more live streams because we're going to be talking about this. Fluffy Panda, member for 14 months. Remember, they bragged it was going to be epic. That's right. They were talking about how like this had a better lightsaber duel than what was in the prequels. You guys remember that?
Yeah. Well, they tried to. They kind of like echoed the Duel of the Fates there a little bit when they had the Saul and the X-23 fighting Smilo there for a minute.
Yeah, I think that the argument is, and I don't know who actually like broke down the time. I don't know if it was Jeremy Johns or if it was Critical Drinker, but someone timed it, and apparently the Duel of the Fates battle is about 11 minutes long in Revenge of the Sith, and then this one, all the fighting together is like 20 minutes or something. So my guess is that they thought, oh, more time equals better, and it's like, no, that's not how that works. Quantity over like, come on.
I thought the fight in Revenge of the Sith was like twice that.
Maybe it is, but I just know.
I was gonna say, all I know is I lost interest after they start leaping around in the lava.
Oh no!
Okay, I'm done.
I mean, I definitely think that it was a bit long, but I enjoyed it.
CG crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that part lost me.
Yeah. I do think, though, it's a lot more interesting to watch them over fake lava than in a dark forest.
Oh, probably. I've seen the clips of this fighting stuff, and it just looks like, a bunch of gay dancers in a nightclub. But anyway.
He speaks from experience.
I do. Well, that's a lot of light sticks.
Well, guys, speaking of gay dancers in nightclubs, Leslye Headland responded to the Acolyte critics about this being the gayest Star Wars ever made, and this is in the Hollywood Reporter, where the Acolyte creator doesn't believe her new Star Wars series is queer with a capital Q.
What does that even mean?
Leslye Headland, showrunner of the Jedi drama starring Amandla Stenberg, is proud to inspire LGBTQ fans, but says the story is being read in unintended ways. And basically, this goes down to that gay reporter who said that this is the gayest Star Wars ever, and Leslye Headland and Amandla Stenberg both kind of laughed and started talking about how C-3PO was gay and R2-D2 was a lesbian and all this other stuff. And Headland saying like that was misconstrued because they were just kind of joking around. It wasn't meant to be taken seriously. And she was basically quoted here as saying, I was surprised by the question. Amandla and I burst out laughing because that's our knee-jerk reaction to being asked that, to be honest. I don't know what the term gay means in that sense. I don't believe I've created a queer with a capital Q content. And perhaps the most queer-adjacent story point is that the 24-year-old Anastasia twins were born to two moms. And she goes on to say that the lesbian space witches are in a matriarchal society. As a gay woman, I knew it would read that their sexuality is queer, but there also aren't any men in their community. So a closeness between the two of them would be natural. It seemed plot-driven. She adds, I would say that it's really reductive to call them lesbians. I think it means you're not really paying attention to the story. So this is just part and parcel of insulting the viewers' your viewership's intelligence by saying like, oh, that soft caress of the cheek between the two mothers doesn't imply that they're gay for each other or anything like that. Also,
I carried them. Yeah. I created them. I'm sorry. Is that not supposed to be implying anything either?
Yeah, and the fact that there aren't any men in their community, it's like, well, okay, lesbians. Like how else are you supposed to read that?
And she's actually just confirming it further because she's saying like, oh, I think it's so reductive for you to say lesbian, and it's like, so what you're trying to say is, oh, how dare we assume their quote unquote gender identity? Yeah. Like that's so basically you're just confirming, so it is a queer show with a capital.
Yeah. And also, like, she's very careful not to use the terms gay or lesbian. She just calls it queer, which can mean anything, right? It's one of those placeholder terms. But it's not just, it is queer, but it's not queer with a capital Q.
It's very peculiar. So it's a very peculiar show. Yes.
I actually want to start with our queer representation on the panel, Brian from the Popcast, because he's here. He's queer. He's our gender non-binary shield against all things woke.
Correct.
Brian, so what's your take on Leslye Headland basically coming out and criticizing people for being reductive when they watch her show?
She didn't just say it that one time. There are multiple articles where, and there are multiple interviews where she is praised for how progressive and gay she is making Star Wars. So it's just not. I know they're trying to backtrack a little bit too, like they're trying to like it's about Star Wars, but she does clearly have an agenda because the show is changing things canonically, or at least the way I see it canonically, and it's adding a lot of DEI and gay stuff because she has an agenda, and maybe it's because she's gay. Okay, whatever. Like, if you were of a particular group and you're like, I have a chance to create Star Wars, so I want to further my group, and I understand that mentality, but what she really should do is just make good Star Wars and don't worry about furthering her group's agenda, because this is what happens. And maybe that's why there's so much gay in Hollywood, because like a lot of these people are gay and they're like, well, we have a duty to further our agenda. Let's add a lot of gay stuff. And, I understand what she's trying to do, but, obviously I don't agree with it.
Well, Dutch Butters, they're kind of leaning into the whole South Park meme of like, put a chick in it, make her lame and gay. So it's all about just like, how many check marks can we tick on this show, as opposed to like, what type of story can we tell? But I think Leslye Headland is convinced that she just wanted to tell like a really good Star Wars story, because according to her, she's been a fan of Star Wars for a long time. Yeah. But I think it's pretty obvious to everyone who watches this show that there's a lot of what they call queer coding in between the lines on this show. So like, what's your take on this? Do you think that she's just that she's innocent, or has she like, really done a job of kind of weaving in propaganda into the show?
Oh, I think she's being very masterful with her weaving in of we didn't want to put this in there. This is just kind of how it comes out, right? I mean, how these are getting to me trying to explain this is almost impossible, because it's just not something I'm in tune with. But clearly, with the casting and with the way these characters are, it's definitely coded to be more acceptable to the alphabet crowd. You know what I mean? It's there. It's absolutely there. It's definitely queer coded. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, when we can watch it, it's just there in your face. And for them to sit there and try to deny that it's made that way is just preposterous.
It doesn't feel very coded when it's like very obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Dutch, you pointed out that this is a coven of lesbian space witches. They're all scissoring one another.
Yeah.
And then before the show started, you were actually having conversation with Smitty about how Smilo Ren, when he starts explaining his motivations to Saul, you're like, that's very obviously like a trans allegory that he's talking about right there. So the question then becomes, it's like, did Leslye Headland intend that, or is it just us reading stuff into it? You know what I mean?
She intended it. She had to have intended it. You can't just like do that on accident. You know what I mean? It's impossible. It's impossible.
So I want to throw this to Smitty. Smitty, what's your take on this? Do you think that there is like a lot of intentional kind of like diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff kind of woven into the series? Or do you think that Leslye Headland's like, oh, you guys are just reading too much into this? Do you think that's more the case?
I mean, of course there is. I mean, you look at the show and see for yourself that it's there. You have an entire cult of witches, all female. It's just, and it's fine, but the sheer fact that you have to, like, she has to talk about this kind of stuff just means that you messed up. You messed up, because instead of talking about Star Wars, we're talking about this.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
So I just feel like I don't get how this helps. You know, if you wanted to make a great story and then add those pieces or add that into the story, just like The Boys. I mean, Frenchie is in The Boys. Frenchie is bisexual. It's cool. You know, it's still a good show to me, but they don't like it's not all over the place. Like, oh, people are going crazy because it's about the show. It's a great show. People love watching. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, I guess.
Yeah, but Frenchie's plot line sucks, bro.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's still a good show. You know,
Yeah,
it's not about him being gay or bisexual. No one's coming out and saying, "Oh, look at us." You know, it's just a good show with good characters. If this had been a good show with good characters and they had actually focused on that instead of, "Hey, we got to get these witches in here, got to have this relationship, got to have these kids." And I just think it wouldn't have been a problem. But now she just keeps talking about this nonsense that has nothing to do with Star Wars. So I don't know.
The part of the problem with me is that they're putting this stuff in IPs like Star Wars and Marvel things. You know, if Star Wars is supposed to be about good versus evil, the rebellion, the empire. We never needed to worry about these weird, personal kind of relationships. I don't need to go into these deep things with these people.
Yeah, we only had one black person in Star Wars, and that was
the coolest dude
Lando
ever.
Calrissian.
He was the coolest dude ever.
Yeah, Lando, man.
Lando Calrissian. So, I don't know. It just seems it's always been the wrong franchise to try to insert this stuff into.
I would like to point out that Lando was followed up by Samuel L. Jackson.
That's
so,
right.
Two of the coolest guys ever.
That's right.
Odin, in a Star Wars TV show where they're using pronouns, do you think it's reductive to say that there's queer coding going on in this show?
I mean, again, I think that Leslye Headland is trying to imagine herself to be a passionate, objective, talented screenwriter, and she has become so blind to the fact that no, she is a political hack. And I think that the unfortunate thing when it comes to many of these people that are political hacks is that because they are so entrenched, they don't even realize that they are sometimes. So again, obviously I would not be surprised if she knows full and well what she's doing and she's just denying it and just, coming up with excuses and lying about it. But I also at the same time wouldn't be surprised if in her mind she is writing a good Star Wars show, and yet the reality is that she's using her quote unquote experience as a queer woman, and therefore if that is represented in the show, then that is just an expression of herself. But again, that's being very, very generous with it, and it still doesn't change the fact that, okay, then it is a show that absolutely has major influences from the LGBTQ+, etc. community, the alphabet community, and that she is clearly putting it into the writing of the show.
Tom, did you kind of narrow in on the same thing I did with that article where she's basically insulting the fan base, right? She's saying all you guys who are jumping on this this is the gayest Star Wars ever are missing the point of my artistry. You're all reductive. You're not paying attention to the story. And to me, the biggest quote in here was when she says, there was a closeness between the two mothers of May and Osha would be natural. It seemed plot driven. And to me, that's a big warning sign for any writer where it's if it's driven by the plot, then it's not organic. And it's just something that you threw in there, and that's a telltale sign of a bad writer. She's trying to make that
argument, I think. Yeah. Here's the thing. I kind of disagree a little bit with what Odin's saying. I think she's fully aware of what she's doing. I think she's using all of this stuff to further her career, because there was this individual who was her agent and that director guy or producer. I can't remember if he's a director or producer of Dragged on Concrete or whatever the hell the name of that movie is, and a few other things. And he was talking about the Leslye that he knew is not the woman that's out there right now running around selling this Star Wars woke BS crap. So to me, that tells me she's one of these individuals that we hear often about who pretend to be part of the woke mentality just so they don't lose their jobs. And in my opinion, it's almost worse, because it's not just that she's keeping her head down just to keep her job. She's actually out there trying to use and promote this idea just to further her career. And he kind of says that it seems like she hit a roadblock with certain things, and then she turned around and started doing this kind of crap. And that's what it sounds like to me. I don't think she believes in any of this stuff, really. I don't think, and honestly, he even said that he was surprised at how badly written the Star Wars show is. It's like, well, that just tells me all she did was cash a check, and she's using this for her resume at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's the bigger thing too, is the show is just poorly written. Like, because I mean, we could talk about all of the coding and messaging, but it's just a bad show no matter. So that's why I love how she's like, oh, people are just, getting so myopic in their thinking. It's like, no. The show is bad. This is the only stuff that's really worth talking about, because there's nothing in the show itself that's worth talking about.
And the reason I think that is because of the way that she explains her reasoning for all of this stuff, right? It's not coming off the typical way. I mean, she's going down certain avenues with it, but it's almost like she's trying to come up with excuses for things that we would normally complain about. Right? Like, that's the difference. It's not just, oh, you're just racist, misogynist, and a sexist, and you're a homophobe and all this stuff, and that's why you don't like the show. No, it's like, no, we're trying to put it into context. And to me, it came off organic, so I don't understand why you have a problem with it. Right? Like, that to her is her response to us saying, well, we don't care if you put this stuff in there as long as it's organic. Right? Like, that's the thing. But she's also obfuscating and missing the point when we also say that a lot of this stuff should just be left out of children's entertainment, period, until it's or in a place where it's a little bit older, to where you can actually have that conversation with your kid. Right? Because there's a lot of people who just don't want to have that conversation with a 5-year-old. It's just, they don't. Right. And I don't blame them. I don't give a shit. That does not make them homophobic. It just makes it a parent who doesn't want to have to introduce sex as an idea to their kids too early.
Tom, according to Kathleen Kennedy, the problem for creatives like Leslye Headland is the primarily male fan base that they're making content for. So no matter what woman they hire, they will always be persecuted by this toxic male fan base.
And in that case, it's like, well, why are you even trying then? I mean, I'm not trying to say you should just give up and not try to carve out your own little spot here. Like, you could have women of Star Wars thing. You could do something like that. And I don't think anybody would have had a problem with that kind of a thing if the other thing was its thing too, right? That's the bigger issue here, is they're insistent on driving away the original fans. And and this isn't just Star Wars. This is all of everything we see everywhere. Like, one of the coolest things was when Andre found in his research a couple of years back for Charlie's Angels versus, the fact that, they're out there griping, why didn't the men go see the movie? Why didn't the men go see the movie? Andre come out and said, why didn't the women go see the movie? Because I did the research and I found that more women actually went to see Rambo First Blood than went to see Charlie's Angels. What does that tell you? That tells you that men and women basically want to see the same kind of things. And for women, why do things like we were talking earlier, like Bridgerton and stuff, do so well? Because it goes right to what they want to see. The same reason that Barbie did well, right? It's not a mystery. And you can turn around and extrapolate that for guys too.
I know that most women want to see Tom do Andre impressions 24 hours a day.
Long. That was a great impression.
That was a very good
I'm starting to think you are Andre.
Why did Bad Boys 4 do good? Because it's a fun movie that didn't preach to you, and it's just like every regular movie that we used to go to see. And the sad part is, in my critic list review, I had to say that it leans slightly right because of their bullshit now. 10, 15 years ago, it had been a normal movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys,
I'm kind of going off of the thing, but the point is, I don't think she believes any of this shit that she's pushing at all.
Guys,
because most base people I know, as far as like lesbians, are more base than most people I know.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, speaking of toxic fans, we got a super chat from Fluffy Panda for $5. This show is so gay and lame, it makes Brian look as straight and manly as Henry Cavill. And like Brian, watching a shirtless Henry, it's hard.
Nice.
I believe Fluffy Panda is the the leader of the Brian fan club on the show. But speaking of Brian, guys, so I'm glad that you actually showed up today, Brian, because originally I had this planned for a little bit early in the show. But we're going to go from talking about one hated sci-fi franchise to another hated sci-fi franchise, which is Star Trek. In particular, a ranking of all the Star Trek captains, which is actually an article that I found through the Popcast Twitter account. So if you guys aren't following them, please be sure to do so. But the Mary Sue, everyone's favorite bastion of non-woke ideals, ranked the best Star Trek captains in history. And this is from Siobhan Ball, who kind of looks trans or lesbian. I don't know. I can't tell.
I think there's only one answer for this one.
Yeah. But the worst Star Trek captain coming in at number 14 is Jonathan Archer, apparentry.
Yeah. Wow.
And he's ranked below every other Starfleet captain not listed by name.
Yeah.
Wow.
This person hates him so much.
Yeah.
He is he's after every other captain that you don't even know a name for.
And how can you have the other version of Kirk on there? That makes no sense.
Hold on, guys. So the original version of Kirk comes in at number 9. Okay.
Oh, fuck this list.
And in addition, so like William Riker is a better captain than Captain Kirk. Sulu is a better captain than Captain Kirk.
No.
Some random black woman captain that no one's ever heard of is better.
5 minutes of one episode.
Michael Burnham comes in at number 4.
Oh, of course she does. I'm surprised she's not number 1.
Yeah.
All right. Catherine Janeway is number 3. Picard is number 2. All right. Can you guess who number 1 is? It's Cisco.
Not the guy. No.
I mean, look, I love Cisco. I've watched DS9. It's the only Star Trek I really know. But I mean, come on. Even I'm going to be like,
all right.
sorry.
So I want to throw this to Brian to lead us off here. Brian, what do you make of this ranking?
It's ridiculous. It's so dumb. First off, before even looking at the list, I predicted that Cisco would be number 1 right away. Because that's like the go-to.
I thought it was going to be Burnham, I'll be honest with you.
No, I thought Burnham was going to be like, top 3 and Cisco be number 1 because every like hardcore, new Trek and
I can't believe Michelle Yeoh ain't on the list, Brian.
And that's what's crazy. You got Twyla Scott on the list, but you don't have Giorgio. Who spent a lot more time in the franchise than Twyla Scott.
No, Giorgio's number 10.
Yeah, Giorgio's on there. But Brian, before you go on,
I missed her. I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Siobhan Ball, she/her is a contributing writer covering news, queer stuff, politics, and Star Wars. A former historian and archivist, she made her first forays into journalism by writing a number of queer history articles. Circa 2016, and things spiraled from there. When she's not working, she's still writing, with several novels and a book on Irish myth on the go, as well as developing her skills as a jeweler. And so guys, check this out. So Carol Freeman,
Freeman. Yeah.
So she's an Etsy
she's number 11. Philippa Giorgio is number 10. We got William Riker, Sulu, Twyla Scott, Christopher Pike.
What?
Yeah. No. So here's what this says. So Twyla only made a very brief appearance, but she had to make it onto this list because of all she achieved in her short life. The youngest person to achieve rank of captain in Starfleet, Twyla was one of the 4 officers, including Picard, who realized that Starfleet had been taken over by parasitic aliens, the Next Generation's conspiracy. Unfortunately, Twyla was killed before she managed to fulfill her full potential, as one of the aliens took control of her body and attempted to kill Picard and Riker through her, leading Riker killing her in self-defense. Still, everything Twyla managed to achieve before her death secures her a place on the list.
Oh God. Yep.
I'm pretty sure Kirk was the youngest captain ever.
Unless they retconned it.
I was gonna say that's always kind of been the thing. I mean, I remember that episode. She's such a fucking flat. I don't even know who that character is.
Yeah, it's conspiracy.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, Brian, sorry to interrupt you there. Finish your thoughts on these rankings.
No, I mean the ranking is it's what every one of like the older progressive still fans of Star Trek, they glorify Cisco as just like the pinnacle of Star Trek characters. So I knew immediately he would be number 1. But I did actually expect Burnham to be top 3. I was surprised when she got 4. But what was infuriating to me was that the original captain, the first captain, was number 9 on the list. That the second I saw that, like I was like,
Brian's right. This really comes down to 2 captains. Let's be real. The real fight comes down to 2.
Kirk and Picard.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. That's it.
Even Weird Al Yankovic in his amazing White and Nerdy talks about, it's like, the only question I've ever had to ask myself is, do I like Kirk or do I like Picard?
That's
like,
it.
That's exactly, because that's the only one that nerds fight over.
In my mind, Kirk edges out because he was first. That's the only reason.
I'm with you. I feel like this is
Brian on that, basically. Yeah, it is. It feels like it.
This is a troll job by an activist on the Mary Sue of all places.
The Mary Sue is just a troll job in general.
Yeah, 100%. So, but but definitely Kirk and Picard. That's my top.
Well, Dutch Butters, what do you think about ranking Jonathan Archer as last behind every unnamed captain in the entire franchise?
I mean, I'm not saying he's the best captain in the world, but he's at least 4 or 5.
Better than Trilot Scott.
Cisco, I'd have put it 3rd just because he is such a fan favorite.
Yeah. I would go. I would probably go Kirk, Picard, Cisco.
Janeway's got to be top 4. Come on,
Janeway, then Archer. I think that's probably
they did Archer dirty as fudge.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and then I don't even count all the Kurtzman era bullshit. You know, I would put the JJ Kirk above all of them. At least he's a good actor, so you know.
Well, they did put him in there, but I call foul on that. I don't think you should be able to use the same character twice.
Okay,
regardless of who they are.
I like the Sulu character, but he was not in a lot as a captain. So
no.
He was kind of a stupid captain. He just kind of sat there and drank tea all day. More than Picard did.
Right.
Yeah.
Also,
the only reason I would give
William Riker and go, that's a captain. I still can I know he was a captain the last couple episodes of Picard, but I don't see him that way. I see him as the first officer.
He hasn't been a captain long enough. No.
Georgiou was a terrible captain. She was at least worse than Archer.
The original or the redo Georgiou? That's the question. Like the original one was supposed to be a decent captain.
The mirror universe Georgiou was not a captain. She was an emperor.
That's true. You're right.
So like the OG Georgiou, like, you know, she couldn't stop a mutiny. She couldn't stop a war. Like she was terrible.
But we only got to see her for like 10 minutes. So that was kind of like where I'm like, I don't know if that's even fair to put her on the list.
She knew how to walk a Starfleet insignia into the ground so that her ship knew where to pick her up. Yeah.
Like the only thing I would argue that gives Kirk the edge over Picard, if you want to get rid of the fan theories, is that Kirk always wanted to be the head of the starship. Picard was always waffling on things here and there on certain places. So to me, you just give him the edge just because he had the spirit of a true captain. Like that's all he wanted. Kirk sacrificed his entire life to be a captain, right? Like that was his whole thing. Like he didn't care. That was his choice. And that's what he wanted to do. Picard was always like, oh, I wish I got to do more things with my life, you know, and stuff like that crap all the time. It's like, okay. But he's a great captain. But they're two extremely different captains in the way they approach things, right?
Yeah. Right. Smitty, are you a Star Trek fan? And what did you think of this ranking?
I am a Star Trek fan, and I would pick Kirk first as well. And simply because of the relationship he had with his crew. I think his crew and their relationship with Kirk was better than Picard and his relationship with like Riker and Whoopi Goldberg. I didn't really like a lot of them. How do you make Cisco 1? He ran a space station. That's like being in charge of a Winnebago. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to see you in charge.
Actually, it's more like being in charge of a gas station. Yeah.
Like that's not fun. You know,
well, he was captain of the Defiant too. So, you know,
it's ridiculous.
Crazy. He also became a god. I don't know if that factors into thing.
What does a god need with a starship?
Exactly. Good. I don't think Janeway's a good captain. I don't know why she's ranked so high, other than the fact that she's a woman.
I've never liked her.
The power of woman.
Power of woman. Odin, what did you think of this ranking? I know you're not a big Star Trek guy.
Yeah, because I at least recognize that the debate most Star Trek fans have is over Picard versus Kirk, right? And so like, at least I recognize that part. But yeah, my only knowledge of it, as I always mention, is DS9. So I like Cisco, but I mean, even the limited knowledge I have of Picard and like obviously next gen Picard, not Picard, is how much like, because I've seen at least some episodes of next gen, so I do recognize how awesome Picard actually is. And then I just obviously, will give the credit to the OG Star Trek fans who have actually seen the OG series and can speak to how amazing the original Kirk is.
All right, guys. Well, I think we spent enough time on Star Trek.
I want to add one thing. I'll go with the chat. Like, I do think Khan deserves to be one of the captains on there.
If Trilot Scott is on the list, then Khan gets to be on the list.
Well, guys, speaking of being on the list, let's talk a little bit about Rey Skywalker and how she's the heart of Star Wars. Real quick,
go back to talking about Star Trek.
We can in a second, but basically, I just want to talk about how director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is out there making the rounds to remind everyone that, hey, I still have a Star Wars movie I'm making, and it's about Rey. And there's just some quotes I wanted to read you guys that she's been making. So basically, she's been calling key Star Wars creators of recent times for advice. And she says, sometimes you walk in the footsteps of people and giants who've created worlds. And in the case of Star Wars, George Lucas's world and the filmmakers that have walked in his footsteps have set this world that they want young viewers to sort of walk into and have an understanding of the world. She's pulling a Kamala Harris there. At the heart of it for me is Rey Skywalker, is Daisy Ridley and her story and taking her on an adventure to a Jedi Academy, the sort of creating a world that is a natural dovetail to the story we've seen her go through in the last 3 episodes. It's working with Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and the team over there in breathing life to characters that everyone loves and has fallen in love with, and finding new characters that the next generation of moviegoers will fall in love with. I've had conversations with J.J. Abrams, and I've had conversations with George Lucas, and of course, Dave Filoni, who's a big part of the Star Wars universe now. We speak very often, and Kathleen Kennedy and Carrie Beck and Simon Emanuel. The great thing about Star Wars is that everyone has a personal connection to it. Everyone is passionate about it. Throughout the fandom, people have clear ideas about who should direct or what the story should be about. I'm drowning out those voices until I'm done. As a storyteller, I'm focused on drawing new moviegoers into the cinema and bringing a sense of nostalgia that will appeal to older fans of the series. And that was in response to basically the interviewer asking her about the out of context comments she made in the past about wanting to make men uncomfortable. So she kind of skewed away from insulting the fan base directly, but she basically said, I'm not going to pay any attention to them. So real quick, just in general panel, what do you guys think of the fact that the people at Lucasfilm think that people actually like the character of Rey and that they have fallen in love with her and they want to base everything going forward around her character?
It's a definition of cognitive dissonance, isn't it?
That's not bad.
I guess of the fans they have left, that might actually be true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all they got, really.
Odin has a point.
Okay. Yeah,
they've driven everyone else away, so hey, this
I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't sit here and call myself a fan of Star Wars anymore. So it's just doesn't even apply to me. So you're right.
What about you, Smitty? Do you think Rey is the future of Star Wars?
I mean, if they retcon everything that they did originally and then start over and then do it right, but I mean, she's coming out saying all the wrong things. She hasn't had any training or schooling as far as putting a movie together or anything like that. And she said as much. And it just feels like Disney lost a bet. It just feels like they lost a bet, and they're just like, how can we mess this up? I bet you I can mess it up worse than you can. Watch. It just feels like, why are you doing this? Why? I just don't get it.
Brian, what do you think about her getting advice from J.J. Abrams? I noticed that she didn't get advice from Rian Johnson, but J.J.'s on that list.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense in this day and age, in this franchise, at where we're at, for you to get advice from J.J. Makes total sense. Let's do it. You know what? Yeah. J.J. Abrams is like that meme of like the Reaper just going from like door to door and killing franchises. And you know what? It makes sense if you're finishing off a franchise, get the original franchise killer on the phone.
Yeah. What kind of advice is JJ gonna give her? You know,
He's like, more mystery boxes.
more mystery boxes and sun flares. Put some flares in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to say, find a movie everyone loves and just
Destroy it.
You know, use that script for your movie.
Mhm.
It's like, don't change anything. Tom, can you explain who Carrie Beck and Simon Emanuel are?
Well, God, I'm trying to remember now. Carrie is she's one of the heads of the, is she the head of the production, or is she actually hired in that?
I don't know.
Was she in the story group at one point?
I was gonna say, I know she used to be, but she's like the one. It seems like that they're grooming to take over for Kathy eventually. Okay, she's an executive VP now of live action development. So I think she'd be right underneath Filoni, would be my guess, because he's actually head of creative. But she only oversees live action stuff, so, which is funny, but yeah. Yeah, she worked for Dimension Films, funnily enough. What's with all these people that used to work
For
with
Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah. That's kind of weird.
Well, Harvey Weinstein.
They used to work under Weinstein.
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein was one of the biggest producers in Hollywood, so a lot of people actually worked.
Yeah, I know that part's
Less
true,
of a surprise
but
for his connection versus the JJ connection.
yeah, just a little weird. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, another one, but and Samuel Manuel, I don't really know much about him at all. He doesn't even really have much of a past here. I mean, unless I'm looking at the wrong guy.
Simon Emanuel.
Oh, Simon Emanuel. That makes sense. I don't know who the fuck he is.
Or is it Simone?
Simone? Is it Simone?
No, it's Simon.
Or is it Simone? We don't know.
Oh, I'm surprised he's a white guy, but he looks like he's probably gay.
Simone.
Oh, and he produced the Batman. Well, there's no surprise there. And he's a producer on The Witcher. Wow. Gee, I wonder where he's one of the propaganda people, evidently, probably. Yeah,
so we can guarantee that the new Rey movie titled New Jedi Order is going to be not woke and all about fixing the fan base and the franchise and all that good stuff.
If this is opposite day, yeah.
Rey is going to be the master she's always been and training new Jedi. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Taking place 15 years
He's
after
just
the
a
rise
producer,
of
it looks like. So like that's all he does is produce.
I bet she'll have dyed hair. I bet Rey will come back with some dyed hair. Gotta have the dyed hair.
Gotta have the purple dyed hair. Yeah.
Yep. She'll be the Jedi Master with the dyed hair.
Maybe blue. Should have some blue hair.
Half of it shaved off.
All right, guys. So we had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. Want to thank my fantastic panel of nerds for being here. Guys, don't forget to hang out a little while longer. We're going to be throwing you over to the Real McCoy podcast in a minute to talk about movies and stuff like that over there. But I want to thank my fantastic panel of nerds. Odin, any final thoughts on any of the topics we talked about today, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, also over on Twitter/X. And as far as final thoughts are concerned, Inside Out 2 has a good chance of crossing $1 billion this weekend, so that's insane. And I think that Deadpool and Wolverine is going to make $1 billion. So yeah, it's that false gold, it's that fool's gold that Disney's probably going to think means that they're on the mend, and then as soon as they have any project that doesn't feature Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's return as Wolverine, and then Inside Out, which they just were able to market very effectively, I think they're going to be in for another rude awakening. But anyway,
do you have any bets involving pineapple pizza?
I do not. I do not have any bets involving pineapple pizza. I've learned my lesson there.
Just check.
Well, I have heard that Inside Out 2 is non-woke, like there's no political stuff in there, and I assume that Wolverine and Deadpool are going to be the same type of thing. So, if Disney maybe might get the nod that like if you leave propaganda and politics out of their movies, they tend to make $1 billion.
It would go with what we were talking about earlier when I had said that I keep hearing from various places that the rest of Disney is kind of trying to steer the ship in the right direction. Lucasfilm is the only one going the opposite direction. So that could be true. I mean, maybe they will see that, if we don't do this overly political and pandering bull crap, people actually go see our movies. Like, I'm surprised people came so flocking to Inside Out 2 without, I'm sure word of mouth helped a little bit, but a lot of people went that opening weekend. So I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So,
well, Tom, were there any more final thoughts you wanted to share, and where can people find more of you?
The only other thing I would have Odin look into on the Inside Out stuff is I've gotten some reports that there's been a lot of schools and stuff buying tickets to go see Inside Out, kind of like the old Golden Opens and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if that's helping bump the numbers a little bit. But either way, it's popular with people, so it's doing well. I think it's more like Black Panther than it is Black Panther 2. But anyway, you can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark. It's always fun to get to hang out with these hooligans. And I'll be talking about Beverly Hills Cop 2 at the Pop Culture Minefield here in about an hour or so. So hopefully we'll see you over there.
All right. And Smitty, thank you for being a guest once again. Everyone, be sure to check out Smitty's channel, link in the description and pinned comment in the chat. He is one of our favorite creators over here at the Salty Nerd Podcast. Infinitely amusing, always has good takes on bad stuff. Smitty, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me at Smitty Snippets. And before I give my final thoughts, I want to say thank you to Matt. My channel wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today without your help. So thank you for that. You as the consumer have the power, right? So don't let anybody talk trash to you and tell you that you're a bigoted or any misogynist or any of that stuff. Okay, they need your dollars. So if you stop paying, then they'll get the message. And that's it.
Right on. And late, but always on time, Brian from the Popcast, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for hosting last week. Any final thoughts, particularly on the Star Trek captain ranking, and where can people find more of you?
I'm just mad that I showed up at the beginning of the Star Wars section, and that's primarily what we talked about. The call sheet says that Star Wars was first, and yet I was here an hour late, and we spent...
I do that to throw you off.
Talking about it. Okay.
He knows your tricks, Brian.
Yeah. Listen. No final thoughts really. That Star Wars, that Star Trek captain list is retarded. It's dumb. Sorry. Makes no sense. But I've seen a lot of dumb takes out there on the internet, and especially from that particular crowd. So I'm not really surprised. I just find it sort of insulting, to fans. As far as Star Wars goes, we're still watching it because Matt says we have to, and that's what we're doing. So
yeah, just wait till we start watching Rings of Power.
It's hard to talk about something without actually seeing it, Brian.
Or Invasion, season 3.
Oh, God. We are gluttons for punishment. Can't wait for season 3.
Speaking of punishment, Dutch Butters, what do we got going on the Salty Nerd Gaming channel and the Salty Nerd Podcast channel and all that stuff?
We got lots of channels now. The gaming channel, we're all about Helldivers right now. We're having a great time over there. We got a really fun community that's building up over there on our Discord channel, and we play with these guys, and it's a lot of fun playing Helldivers, killing bugs and bots and stuff, and we're doing live streams 4 or 5 nights a week depending on Alex and my schedule. We got our Salt Divers podcast coming out every Tuesday, and we're just having fun, playing some games. And over on the Salty Nerd Podcast, we're back to our roots. We're watching bad movies and we're talking some trash, and it's a super fun. And we're doing a weekly House of the Dragons breakdown after the fact. And this week we're watching, I don't remember the name of it, but just so you guys understand the kind of movies we're watching, it stars The Mountain and Mike Tyson. So that's what is the name of that movie, man? I forget that we're watching this week.
desert heat or something weird like that.
It's
It's Mike Tyson versus Hathor, the guy who played the Mountain in the Game of Thrones. So we watched a movie that had Mike Tyson in it last week, and so we were like, you know what? Let's try to find a movie that Mike Tyson actually has a substantial role in, because that was too much fun.
The Hangover.
Not a substantial role, not a guest role.
It's a role I remember very well, so I consider that substantial.
Yeah, and The Hangover is a bit too good of a movie for us to be watching, frankly.
Yeah, it's gotta be bad. Yeah.
But want to give a big shout out to everyone who gave us super chats during the live stream. Eric Winberg, Mexican Iron Man, Fluffy Panda, thank you so much for your support. And big shout out to Jillian N. and Aaron Charman for gifting up to 10 Salty Nerd memberships. Also, a big shout out to Eric Winberg for his gifted membership, and Mephisto Movie Reviews for signing up with us. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for that. And as always, tune in next week, same salty time, same salty channel, for more Salty Nerd. We're going to be talking about Acolyte episode 6. See how bad this show can get before it falls off the cliff even further. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of other stuff to talk about. In the meantime, stick around for the Real McCoy podcast, aka Mephisto's Movie Reviews. Should be a good show over there. And I want to thank my fantastic panel of nerds, including Smitty Snippets, for being here with me today. And as always, stay salty, my friends.